and protect at least 100,000 direct jobs that are at risk due to the effects of COVID. Financial Sector Deepening Uganda, or FSDU, is the only organization in the country that focuses on issues of financial inclusion and building an inclusive financial market. Markets that include the marginalized like youth, women, smallholder farmers, refugees, and small businesses. We are honored to have joined forces with the Mastercard Foundation, whose mission of addressing systemic issues in an economy, of ensuring greater incomes and livelihoods through affordable and meaningful finance matches with ours. I'm sure Adrian, the country head for Mastercard Foundation, will echo similar sentiments in his speech. FSDU is also proud to have partnered with the Sigma Capital, who are the facility managers of this fund, and you will hear from David, the managing director, later. We've also partnered with the latest credit reference bureau in the market, New Grid, to help better credit information markets in the country. My role as speaker here today is to help lay the context for today's discussions and dialogue. A couple of key questions that I hope to answer is why the facility and why it matters. I have a few brief slides, and in the interest of time, I will keep it only to the high points, assuming that technology works with me. It seems to have a mind of its own. All right. Okay. So we all are aware that MSMEs are the backbone of the Ugandan economy. What is more particular is that micro enterprises in Uganda dominate the sector. They represent 93% of the MSME space. When it comes to employment creation outside of agriculture, they're also the largest job provider.
If you send it to me
But
on email,
it's
I
important
can
to
do
note
it.
that most micro
do it. Well, let's do it
enterprises
now.
are owner-operated, meaning it's a one-person enterprise or one or two people enterprise. We, as FSD Uganda, are an evidence-based organization. So between 2020 and 2021, we've done a lot of research that informs the public sector and the private sector on the economic consequences of COVID. I'm just going to highlight 6 key points that are material to this discussion. One, we've seen that there are declining incomes that will send informal businesses either below the poverty line, especially if they are one-person businesses, or pushing them closer towards closure. The formal sector will see 100,000 jobs vanish. An estimated 4.4 million informal sector workers will see their earnings fall or drop. Some industry experts also estimate that the cost of inputs due to supply chain related issues will increase by 30%, having a cascading impact on the cost of businesses. MSMEs, based on our data, have already started tapping into their savings for business as well as household expenditure, lowering their resilience. Small retail businesses are additionally vulnerable to price fluctuations in this current environment. And women businesses will see their earnings drop even further than men. In 2021, to further understand the impact on MSEs, as well as the institutions that provide finance to small businesses, we had 2 parallel studies. There was a demand-side study where we picked up a sample of 350 small businesses, and then there was a supply-side study where we tried to find data from Tier 3 and Tier 4 institutions on their viability and the type of businesses that they were supporting. Among the 350 businesses that we surveyed, there are 4 key areas worth noting. One is the recovery status of these MSMEs. Only 3% of the sample surveyed of the businesses said that they had recovered to pre-pandemic levels of revenue. 58% were in the recovery process, and opening the economy will certainly help them, and we hope it has. 4% were not very hopeful that they will recover. 35%, based on our own data and analysis, were potentially unviable. They had not made loan repayments for 6 months, were on the verge of being severely in arrears for multiple bill payments, or had already laid off employees. There was a big change, according to the businesses surveyed, in customer behavior. And one of the key phenomena was depressed demand. There was not enough sales to keep the business going. The third was change in supplier terms. 50% of the MSEs surveyed reported that suppliers are no longer providing stock on credit. 53% of MSEs, as a follow-on reaction, discontinued sales on credit to their customers. So what were their coping mechanisms? 50% of MSEs surveyed took credit after the pandemic. Credit availability, however, reduced because of the cautiousness in this climate, and the ticket size of borrowing has gone down to about 700,000 shillings for micro and small businesses. 40% of the MSEs that borrowed still have outstanding balances and are looking at working capital loans to support the recovery of their business. I would be remiss if I did not mention the exasperated gender divide. If you look at the top graph, it goes between 2019 to 2021. That's the timeline of duration, especially towards the end of 2021. And you'll see a drop in median household income from 900,000 to 450,000. But more pertinent is the graph on the left-hand side corner, which shows the difference between women and men, especially households that have women-led MSEs. And then there's a gap. And there's a gap in how much take-home income women-led households have versus men. We also then segmented the MSMEs that we surveyed. We segmented them from 1 to 8, where 1 is your business has had no impact because of COVID, you're poised for growth, and everything is fantastic. All the way to 8, which is in red, where the business is no longer viable. The segments from 1 to 5, where 5 being the color in yellow, we felt were in the recovery category, whereas 6 to 8 were more in the survival category. And if you look at the kind of loan sizes they were looking for from 1 to 8, we'll notice that the loan sizes that they're seeking is anywhere between 1.5 to 2 million Ugandan shillings, which is like the sweet spot for microfinance. And that's why we have decided, as a facility, that the institutions we'll be working with will be deposit-taking microfinance institutions, as well as non-deposit MFIs and SACCOs, because they serve this clientele. And last is the supply side. The people who serve this clientele, the financial institutions, how viable are they? That was our next question, and what kind of support can we extend to them? In order to do that, we also categorized these institutions. Of course, the sample size was less and smaller, and we're very grateful to AMFU that gave us anonymized data that helped us in understanding this better. Category 1 was your financial institution is flourishing, and category 5 was that the financial institution was unviable. In the sample that we surveyed, 70% of SACCOs were 1 to 3, meaning that they were healthy, can continue supporting their members and the member businesses. When it came to MFIs, 91% of them were in 1 to 3, meaning they can continue supporting their clients, which gives us faith that we will be able to support the recovery of small businesses and help in achieving the agenda of national development as well as financial inclusion over the 5-year term of this facility. Thank you for listening to me.
Mastercard FDN, as well as a Sigma Capital. Yeah. I borrowed a quote from Helen Keller: "Alone we can do so little, but together we can do so much." It's a pleasure to have the team from the Mastercard Foundation join us today. Please join me to invite the country head Uganda, Mr. Adrian Bukenya Mulindwa, to speak to us today. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Hope you are all well today. All protocols observed. We're very happy to be here, and we want to thank Rashmi for that great introduction of this very noble cause. We're 3 years into the pandemic, and I know many of us are suffering from COVID fatigue. We are ready to be done with COVID. However, as you've heard from Rashmi, COVID isn't done with most of our fellow Ugandans. Its side effects linger. Jobs are flagging, incomes remain lower than they were pre-pandemic, revenue streams and businesses are still recovering, and our most vulnerable, the young women, young people in rural areas, and refugees, experience the brunt of these realities. A clear and immediate priority is to enable vaccinations. Last year, the Mastercard Foundation launched a $1.5 billion partnership with the Africa CDC that is to enable vaccine access and delivery for several African countries, including Uganda. So we are committed to this goal, but it is critical that we also maintain a focus on economic priorities that are equally important. At the Foundation, our work in Uganda is guided by a bold strategy we call Young Africa Works. We launched our strategy in Uganda just before the pandemic. And under Young Africa Works, we have committed to enabling 3 million young Ugandans access dignified and fulfilling work by 2030. And young women make up 70% of that target. How do we plan to do this? By helping drive access to finance, education, skills, and training. Enabling access to markets across key sectors like agriculture and the digital economy, and by working closely with the private sector and grassroots organizations. But we really can't talk about creating new frontiers of opportunity without reclaiming old ground lost during the pandemic. That is why we're here today, because supporting the recovery of MSMEs is central to reclaiming that ground and the economic future of the country. That is what the $25 million recovery fund for micro and small enterprises in Uganda is about. The idea of getting behind MSEs as a strategy for expanding economic opportunity is tried and true. The Foundation's work over more than a decade in Uganda has shown us the power of providing smaller scale entrepreneurs with affordable, accessible, easy-to-use financial products. Entrepreneurs like Sarah Kako. Sarah is a young mother of 3 from Western Uganda and a farmer. When we partnered with a financial institution to offer loans in her region, she grabbed the opportunity. She applied for and received a loan of 1.6 million Uganda shillings, which she used to start a maize value addition business. She worked hard, and soon she was bringing on additional staff to support the growth of her business. She went on to expand into rice value addition and to hire more staff, all women. And she's been able to support the education of her 3 young children. Yasmin Alimiga is another example from the opposite end of the country. At 25, he had a vision of starting a farm. So he put together a plan, and through our support, he accessed a loan of 9.5 million Uganda shillings. He started his farm a few years ago with just 7 goats. Not only did he pay back his loan today he owns more than 40 goats, has bought additional land, has built a house, and is paying for his brother's college tuition and the education of his own 2 children. These stories are backed up by data. Through our work investing in MSEs over the years, we have reached tens of thousands of people, and we have found that these investments help create sustained work opportunities and improve the well-being of young people who report increased food security, improved health, and more assets as a result. So for us, the formula is clear, because above all, we know that Ugandans, and Ugandan youth in particular, are among the most enterprising people in the world. They are the answer to our economic challenges. They will unlock our economic opportunities, and they just need our support. So as much as anything else, this fund is about believing in the promise and resilience of Ugandans, especially Uganda's young people and women. And at the foundation, that is a belief we hold dear. So thank you all for joining us, and thank you for believing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adrian, and a big thank you to the Mastercard Foundation for the commitment driven through the Young Africa Works strategy. We appreciate. We do, to our audience joining us online, we do apologize for the hitch that we had in the beginning, but we are now up and running. I hope you can be able to hear us. Please continue to engage with us. Make sure to drop any questions that you have in the chat box so that we can be able to pick that up. Yeah? We are getting to the details of our program. Our technical team is lined up to share with us what the program is about and at what stage we are at. The program will definitely generate, this part of the agenda will definitely generate a number of questions. We have placed some, small cards on your tables. Some are green, some are blue. Please feel free to write your questions so that our team can move around to pick them up, just in preparation for our Q&A that is coming right after the program presentations. Yeah? And to our audience online as well, please drop your questions in the chat and we'll pick up those questions. I would like to welcome the Director of Programs, FSD Uganda, Mr. Joseph Lutwama, to lead us through this session. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I won't belabor this. My colleague, Rashmi, really gave a detailed breakdown of the reason why we're here, the studies that we've done, and what we've been able to find, and why we're here. I'll go straight to the So the fund is really focused on reaching out to the micro and small enterprises, and we are planning to work through 25 institutions, including Tier 3 and Tier 4 financial institutions. We're looking at disbursing $20 million US, and we're looking at a target of protecting 100,000 jobs and also creating 150,000 new jobs. Of course, we are focused on women-owned and led businesses. A majority is going to go towards women-owned and led businesses. The women that will not also reach out to the men-owned and led businesses, but the focus is going to be mainly on women-owned and led businesses, and more particularly youth-owned businesses. And we're looking at youth between the ages of 15 up to 35 years old. We're looking at least targeting to reach out to 50,000 micro and small enterprises. And we're also looking at not only supporting micro and small enterprises, but also the participating financial institutions. Much as our focus is going to be on those institutions that are already digitized, but we provided some funds that will go towards providing technical assistance to further improving especially the loan management processes of the participating financial institutions. And here we're looking at least supporting 10 participating financial institutions out of the 25 who may want to improve or whom we will see that may need to improve their loan management processes. The other thing that the program will focus on is improving credit information markets within especially the Tier 4 financial institutions. We know that until now, Tier 4 financial institutions have not been part of the Credit Reference Bureau. Recently, the Bank of Uganda licensed New Grid to pilot provision of Credit Reference Bureau services to the Tier 4 financial institutions. So this fund will give us an opportunity to pilot and test what works and what does not work, and what are the best practices in terms of extending these services to the Tier 4 financial institutions and to the micro and small enterprises. So we are glad to partner with New Grid, who will be piloting CRB services with the participating financial institutions, but also will use this opportunity to sensitize the broader community of the Tier 4 financial institutions in terms of the value of taking on CRB services. I've already talked about this. So who are our partners? Who are the different partners or stakeholders with this fund? Of course, we have a Mastercard Foundation. We've heard from the country director. We have a technical investment committee that will be the supreme governing body of this fund. And with us here this morning, we have some of the members represented here who sit on the technical investment committee. We have Ms. Jackie Mbabazi, who is the executive director of AMFU, the Association of Microfinance Institutions of Uganda. We also have Grace Majara from CARE International. She brings to the committee the gender perspective and the gender dynamics, knowing well that the fund is focused on women-owned and led businesses. Will benefit from the value she brings in terms of how best we can reach out to women in terms of credit and support that they need. We also have Francis Kisirinya from the Private Sector Foundation Uganda. We have John Paul Namona, who is an impact investment advisor. We have Wilbur Wall, who is from the banking fraternity. He's the executive director of the Uganda Bankers Association. Of course, on the committee, we also have Ms. Rashmi Pillai, representing FST Uganda, and Arnold Biarugaba, who represents the Mastercard Foundation. Of course, ASIGMA, who's a facility manager, is also represented on the investment committee because they provide investment advice and also they support the onboarding of the participating financial institutions. More details, of course, will be provided by David in the later part of this presentation. So that is the Technical Investment Committee. Of course, FST Uganda, we are the lead partner in this project or in this program. We provide oversight and coordinate all the different partners to ensure that the fund delivers on its objectives. I talked about the facility manager. David will deliberate more on the different things that ASIGMA will be doing, but they will be conducting due diligence on the PFIs who will be participating in this fund. They will be monitoring the portfolios of these PFIs that will be focused on reaching out to the target group of the fund. And they will also be monitoring to ensure that the funds are used for what they are meant to be used for. But also, most importantly, they'll be managing, they'll be responsible for investing of the funds to ensure that we're able to meet the objectives of the fund, because one of the objectives of the fund is to preserve capital, because the funds will have to be returned back to the fund, the Mastercard Foundation, and one of ASIGMA's responsibilities is to ensure that those funds are managed well and we're able to cover whatever losses that may come out of the disbursement of the loans. Of course, we have the financial institutions with whom we will partner to be able to disburse these loans. We have New Grid, who will be able to support in piloting CRB services within the Tier 4 financial institutions. I won't talk much about the terms of access because my colleague David from ASIGMA will be able to provide more details on that in the next presentation. So what are our targets? I already said that we are targeting to reach out or to support 25 Tier 3 and Tier 4 financial institutions over the next 5 years. We'll be focused on serving micro and small enterprises. That's why you see the target ticket sizes really fit that category, a minimum of 100,000 Uganda shillings and a maximum of 10 million Uganda shillings. Of course, we'll be providing, like I already said, technical assistance to some of the participating financial institutions in terms of improving their loan management processes by leveraging technology. I already talked about the target number of 50,000, 45,000 micro, because they really form a large part of that segment, and 5,000 small enterprises. So those are the targets: 90% micro, 10% small, 30% women-owned, and 40% youth. So out of the 50,000 MSMEs, we hope that we can get 30%, reach out to 30%, at least 30%. If we can be able to reach out to more, that would be fantastic. And out of the 50,000, we're also hoping to reach out to 40% youth-owned and led enterprises. Yes, like I said, 25 PFIs to get this credit support from this facility. 10 of those PFIs We hope we can be able to support them to improve on their loan management processes by leveraging technology. Up to 10 PFIs supported to adopt CRB services for their members. We hope that we can also be able to have up to 7 PFIs improve practices and processes on how they offer credit to MSMEs so that they can be able to achieve growth and employment. We hope that we can be able to reach out to 230,000 individuals in terms of employment. Like I said, part of that 230,000, 100,000, we hope that they can be able to, will be those already employed, but probably they are under threat of falling back into unemployment. So we hope that we can protect those jobs, but also create more jobs. And that's how we are able to arrive at 230,000 individuals in wage employment. We know that a number of these enterprises are sole proprietorships, so we hope that we can also be able to reach out to enable 20,000 individuals who are self-employed to keep their jobs or even get more jobs. We hope that it will not just be disbursing loans, but loans that can transform businesses. And we hope that the enterprises that will receive loans from this facility, they can be able to increase their revenue, but they can also be able to acquire assets that can help them grow. So we're looking at 10,000 enterprises in each of those cases. Thank you. That's really the overview of the fund, and I'll invite my colleague David from Asigma to give you more details in terms of how do you actually access this facility as a PFI, and how will the MSCs that you support be able to benefit from this facility. David, you're welcome.
Hello, as David gets ready with his presentation, please write questions on the note cards on your tables. We will be moving around to pick them up. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. All protocol observed. We're happy to be here as Asigma, as the facility manager. We'd like to thank FSD Uganda for partnering with us, for selecting us to work on this, and most especially the Mastercard Foundation for the commitment you have made to Uganda to create opportunities for young people. And that's really core to my heart. Asigma is a firm that's now, I think, about 50 strong. 90%, I think 95% of those people are below 30. So, implementing this facility that's supporting youth and women MSCs is just in line what you're trying to do. By working with us, FSD selecting us, you're also creating opportunities for us. So, just as a start off, before we get into the technical bits, I think it's very important to know what all this stuff means to the partners and the people we are working with. Just an overview of who Asigma is. Asigma works across the investment value chain. We prepare businesses, government entities, development agencies, especially around sustainability and investment. Then we fundraise for the private sector, and then we develop and manage projects, private sector projects, manufacturing, program management, USAID subcontracts, and now this fund. We are licensed by the Capital Markets Authority of Uganda as an investment advisor. So, we bring a wealth of expertise, experience in financial services, especially having worked, with, Equity Bank under the New Tech FSD program, FSDU in the past doing some research for them, Mastercard Foundation when we were in the refugee settlements. So that's why we're here. Just before I go to the selection process for the participating financial institutions, just to clarify, from my colleague Joseph, the fund is focused on youth and women MSCs. Actually, 40% are youth, 30% are women. It is true that during the pandemic, and particularly, and I know that's the reason why Joseph said women, is because if you look at the data, I think in terms of the reduction in profit, women-owned enterprises, the profit reduced by about 67% as compared to male 50%. So the women-owned enterprises were more affected than the guys. Criteria for micro and small enterprises, I saw them on the slide, Joseph's slide, but just want to point out too. Obviously registered and operating in Uganda, and working in critical sectors, which I acronymed as the athletes, agriculture, tourism, health, education, light manufacturing, trade and services. And of course, the credit is going to be between $26 and $3,000. That's 100,000 and 10 million shillings. Quickly, because we will be selecting our role as a facility manager. Will be one to select the participating financial institutions, and when I mean by select, working with FSDU that has oversight and fiduciary responsibility. Already, we have started that process, pre-launch, because the idea was we launch today when we already have some institutions that we'll work with, and then later on, the other institutions will be onboarded. But this is the process. So, and the reason why we show this process is for expectation management. So the first step is the expression of interest. When the time comes, and I'll show you the work plan, and this is the same process that those that we are going to start with have gone through. There's the request for expression of interest, and the blue is what a Sigma is doing, the gray is FSDU, and the green is the governing body, which is the Technical Investment Committee, abbreviated as TIC. So you have, the EOI coming in, and then we shortlist, and then FSD Uganda there. I don't know if I can. Let me see. I wish I could. All right. Just the first panel. Oh, yeah. All right. This works. So you have, through the shortlisting, then we have approval from FSD Uganda, and then the term sheets are signed. The term sheets are really the, anyone who has got a loan from a bank, you get an indication of the terms of, of access of borrowing. So these are term sheets that we'll present to the financial institutions that have been shortlisted after FSD Uganda's approval. And then we do the light due diligence. So light due diligence, before we get into deep, we just want to know and just understand who we are working with, whether they perform the criteria that we will be looking at. And some of this criteria is just about, are you licensed? Are you working the right client segmentation, digitization, your financial position, can you absorb the funds, and things of that nature. And then FSD Uganda reviews that. Once we have then we go to the investment committee, because this is the governance body. So when we have done the first, we have shortlisted, due diligence has been done, and FSD Uganda and Sigma makes a recommendation to the investment committee on the appropriateness of the applicants and the amounts that they can absorb. Then the investment committee does the final approval within the guidelines that have been designed. Then you have the second shortlisting, and then we do the detailed due diligence. And this means that, our partner financial institutions have to really, be mindful, that we will now come in and turn them upside down and request for all kinds of things. And once they have passed the final due diligence, and FSD Uganda has reviewed, the Technical Investment Committee can go ahead and make the final approval. And then contracts are signed and disbursements are made. So just the transparency of the process. It's always important, the people who are in the business of lending, sometimes you just want to receive the money there and then, but it's absolutely important that the same way FSD Uganda chose to work with a youthful Sigma, is the same way that the partners have to be aligned within the intentions of the program. And that is reaching out to youth and women MSCs. So if in your portfolio, you don't have these kinds of businesses, then it becomes very, very hard. If you are asking for too much money that you cannot absorb, it becomes very, very hard. If you make it very hard for us to track the impact that you will have, you make it very, very, very hard. So if you don't have the right governance structures in place, you make it very, very hard. So there's just alignment, and for expectation management, there's a proper process, and that slide shows you how we work with FSDU. It shows you the role of the Technical Investment Committee, and sort of guarantees the foundation that the processes that have been set in place will ensure that impact is delivered and that the funds can be returned within risk management parameters. So quickly, to tell you what due diligence means to us, there are three broad buckets. One is reputation risk, then there's credit risk, and program results risk. Now, reputation risk is everything. You don't want the Mastercard Foundation, the very good name that's really setting out to create impact in the country. You don't want this very good name to be soiled because of the wrong partners that have been selected. So when we are selecting the partners, we have come up with some sort of quantitative framework that has non-negotiables. And that means that however much you have performed on some key areas, they are non-negotiables. And so reputation risk, corporate governance, ethics and safeguarding, legal, political exposure. And so that's then credit risk. Everyone knows about credit risk, portfolio size and all these, the systems you have in place. I'll speak particularly on program results risk, because we want the partners we have selected to be able to deliver the results for us. And that means deliver the results and us being put in a position to report to the fund and the Mastercard Foundation on the impact that's delivered, and also the capacity to absorb. So we will have broad categories that we'll be working with bands. We'll have bands that will give a bit more money. So we have 3 bands. You have the $2 million band, then there's 1 to 2, then there's $250,000 to $1 million. And that's really, has been designed around being able to reach the impact numbers that we want, and also supporting very many financial institutions. So that's the high level. What has been done to date? Today we launch, but we have been in the kitchen cooking. The FSDU boardroom, there's a concept in quantum mechanics that when you speak in this room, 8 years later, the waves can be detected because of this physics concept. I know Rashmi did physics. She may correct me, but I think it's quantum physics or something. So if you went in the FSD boardroom, things have been done. From December 6th, I think, we have been cooking. We have been preparing. We have been making sure that all the documents are in place, the processes are in place, the procedures are in place. For example, this just shows you a brief timeline. We wanted to launch with some partners, because if we launch today and we are not ready and we go into the media, we may get 1,000 applications, And remember, this is about the youth and women MSCs, okay? And so expectation management, we wanted to have partners, so by the time we launch, the people, the end beneficiaries, the money will get to them as quickly as possible. So we came up with the process of selecting some partners. So we developed the expression of interest process was sent out to select partners in consultations with AMFU, and other stakeholders, and and we selected those partners that have broad spread, country spread, and they can deliver the impact. And then they submitted their EOIs, and evaluation, started. We held a learn and share workshop, that's number 3, to hear out from them. Many times programs start and impress ideas and impress rules on participants, and that really breaks you. So we had a learn and share workshop to hear from them. Are we doing the right thing? To have their input into the process. Quickly, after that, we incorporated their feedback into our processes, into the kind of tools that we need, into the kind of targets, into the kind of requirements that we require of them. We have developed a portfolio monitoring tool, and this is to give the confidence to the Mastercard Foundation that from the get-go, let's say we are ready today, we can be able to monitor, how those loans, how the financial institutions, who is receiving these loans and how the portfolios are being managed, and whether the impact numbers, targeting 40% youth, 30% women, micro and small enterprises. We have developed term sheets, and this really is about the terms, what are we looking for? And you'll see in the fact sheet that we are, for example, giving concessional loans to these performing financial institutions at a rate of 2.5%, okay? So 2.5%. And then making sure that we do not distort the marketplace by requiring them to lend out at a particular interest rate, but by working with them to tell them that since you have got cheap money, concessionary money, how can you come down with the cost of lending? And then there's due diligence and risk rating checklist. This has been done. And we had long sessions with FSDU to say, okay, what due diligence do we need to carry out? For example, we are not acquiring the institutions, we are lending them money. We heard from the Learn and Share workshop, and we knew their sensitivities, but at the same time made them appreciate the fact that there are certain requirements, certain objectives they're trying to achieve, and therefore they need to be able to abide by our turning them upside down. So we prepared that. And most critically, the treasury management policy, because as a facility manager, we'll be ensuring that undisbursed funds are invested within Uganda and in safe liquid instruments. But we didn't want to do that, aberrantly, that we wake up like a day trader, in a dome, clicking a button, things go into place. A policy has been developed. The Treasury Investment Committee has adopted this policy, and we have critical guidelines and processes of how a Sigma and FSDU will work together to ensure that this money is being managed well. And I think this should give confidence again to the Mastercard Foundation that all is well. And then now we're here today, number 8, the launch. Okay, so this is what's been happening since December 6th, and we have some, I'm happy to have some of the young people from a Sigma who've been in the kitchen working on this. Maybe they can stand up. Today is your day as well. It means a lot, and I think it will mean well to the Mastercard Foundation to just see, some young people just representing the team that has been in the kitchen with the FSDU and working on this stuff. Next steps. The fund, has been launched. And I think week 4, right, the bank, 24th February, the launch is being held. Quickly, we will be preparing the term sheets. That means that we have gone, we have gone ahead of the process. We have contacted some financial institutions. We want to give them some term sheets, because I cannot start doing due diligence on you if I've not indicated that, I'm going to give you some money. So there has to be an initial indication of the term sheets. And then we shall shortlist by the 4th week of March. We shall be shortlisting the top. PFI is an acronym. I don't like acronyms, but each sector tends to have its acronyms. But here it means participating financial institution. And then we expect the first TIC meeting. TIC stands for Technical Investment Committee. And that's really the governing body to happen in the first week of April. And then the due diligence should happen in April as well. And once that goes very well, the approved institution should start receiving money in May. Now, you may realize, you may say, we are launching today, but May seems to be very far. It's the responsibility that we have to the foundation, to the people who have given us this money, to ensure that the right processes are in place, especially with the partners that we are going to be working with. So, and then, we'll start doing monitoring and reporting, May as well. And within the mid-May, we shall now have the open EOI for the second selection. So for all those other, performing, potential partners, financial institutions, the circles, the non-deposit taking MFIs and the deposit taking institutions, we will have that call. And the hope is that by that time, our processes will now be robust to get big volume and get in there. The idea behind, starting with an initial group and then following it up later was this is a recovery fund, The beneficiaries need that money yesterday. So we need to be starting to disperse that money within, the parameters of risk management, the right partners that can give us the impact that we need. Just as a parting remarks, one of the things that we have learned during this process working with FSD Uganda is that I think programs are delivered by and with strong partners. And co-creation and collaboration is at the core of what the Mastercard Foundation wants to see. We know that, during this process, for example, we are going to be working with the New Grid. New Grid, is newly licensed to provide CRB services to the Tier 4 institutions. And our work, just in summary, onboarding these institutions, doing the DD, monitoring. We shall also be supporting the financial institutions on their road to digitization. Remember, during the pandemic, it's not only the businesses that suffered, but also the pathways of money, the pathways to the businesses. So let's say even the money was, but the pathways. If the pathway is manual, then during a lockdown, you can't go to the bank. So we are supporting them to the road to digitization, particularly on loan origination, management, and monitoring. And if you want to have resilience, and if credit is one of the biggest, credit risk is a big hindrance, then having a credit reference bureau at the Tier 4 level is extremely important. So having a New Grid to pilot its services, will be something that we hope this program can be able to achieve. And New Grid, Sigma, FSDU, and the Mastercard Foundation, I know that the spirit of collaboration and co-creation that has been demonstrated at this point in time will help us deliver an impactful 5-year project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Operations Program Management Team. I would like to recognize the arrival of our guest of honor, the Honorable Permanent Secretary and the Secretary to the Treasury, Mr. Ramadan Ngobi. We are privileged that you're able to join us. You're most welcome. Yes, we are at a point where we've just received the remarks on how the program is going to work, and we have some questions. Please feel free to continue to write some questions. We shall be able to respond to your questions even after this event. Fortunately for us, in the interest of time, I have 3 questions. One is actually probably a request from Huda. Huda wishes to receive the presentations She has shared her email address, and I'll be sure to send that to you. Thank you very much. I have two very critical questions. One, and another question is from Innocent. He says, thank you for the great presentation, very timely. He has some observations. This year, the government of Uganda, through the Ministry of Gender, announced youth funds targeting COVID recovery for similar target groups as MSE fund, including others already existing funds. How do you plan to synergize in order to avoid duplication, but importantly, complement the programs? I'll invite our Director of Programs, Joseph Lutwama, to respond to this question. Joseph, maybe you can quickly come up here.
I think we don't hope to monopolize the process of supporting the MSCs. We know that there are more than enough MSCs that actually need this support, and the Mastercard Foundation Recovery Fund is just one of the many initiatives that are working together with other initiatives to be able to serve the tremendous or immense need that we have in this market. So ours is really a complementary effort to all the others, and that's why we have chosen to work within the financial institutions who are already serving this. So basically we are providing liquidity support to the other liquidity support that they're actually going to receive from other funds. So I'm sure they will more than be ready to receive this, because I'm sure there's tremendous demand out there that needs to be met, and this is really just a complementary effort. So we will not be duplicating, actually we'll only be complementing what is already there.
Thank you, Joseph, for your response. I take this opportunity to read question number 2. And it's an opportunity for us to meet someone from New Grid.
So just to add to Joseph's response, the Small Business Recovery Fund starts from the minimum they are lending is 10 million shillings. Okay. No. The one that's being launched by the government, the minimum they are lending is 10 million shillings. Okay. We start. And that's our maximum. So we're operating in a space below theirs. So whereas we are complementary, we also, we are also focusing on what we call the bottom of the pyramid.
Thank you, David. The second question gives us an opportunity to meet someone from New Grid. The question is, the question is from Anna. Will CRB be offering its services at a fee or reduced rates for PFIs, or how concretely will it partner to the facility?
Hello, good morning, everyone. I'm called John Mark Mwangala. I'm the Director of Partnerships and Impact at New Grid. Thank you so much for the question. Just to respond directly, we will make sure that the CRB services are affordable. We don't want to disrupt the market. Just to add, in terms of our partnership, we'll be in charge of ensuring that the PFIs have very clear information when it comes to how to deploy credit reference services in their institutions. And we'll also be working on ensuring that we develop a very simple awareness campaign and materials during the project. I hope that's enough information. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John Mark. I see questions are beginning to flow in, even from our online audience. We really promise that we'll be able to respond to all your questions. In the interest of time, we'll be able to respond to those questions at a later time and be able to share them with you, especially upload them on our website. I would request and ask that we move on with our agenda. We've heard so much about PFIs, participating financial institutions, and we are talking tier 3, tier 4s. I'm privileged to invite our representative from the Microfinance Regulatory Authority to tell us more about the readiness and preparedness that they have. We please welcome Patricia Ahonuza, who is representing Ms. Edith Tusubira, the Executive Director of the Microfinance Regulatory Authority. Most welcome.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored to be here. You're welcome. Our guest of honor, Dr. Ramadan Govi. Thank you, Mastercard Foundation. Thank you, FSD Uganda. Thank you for this opportunity that you've accorded UMRA to speak. Uganda Microfinance Regulatory Authority is a very young regulatory authority in Uganda. It started in 2017, and if you do not know, it is a regulator for tier 4 microfinance institutions, where we have money lenders, we have non-deposit taking microfinance institutions, we have SACCOs, and self-help groups. We are situated at Renzori Towers, and our duty and mandate is to regulate, to license, and supervise those institutions that we have categorized. Now, if you may all know, most of our micro and small businesses access finance from these categories of financial institutions, and a lot of surveys have been done because of course, the impact and effects of the COVID-19. And worldwide, we have seen that even global agencies have done a lot of projections, and most of them point to these businesses closing. Most of them point to these businesses laying off workers. If you will, I will draw your attention to the International Labour Organization estimates. They had an impact on COVID-19. They said it would raise global unemployment, and this would signal that small businesses would not operate because most of the people would be laid off. And we also know that these small businesses, micro and small businesses, are mostly run by the youths who we are very passionate about supporting today. So as UMRA, we are delighted that the government, through Minister of Finance, creates enabling environment where partnerships like Mastercard Foundation and FSDU can partner and be intentional about creating solutions to the problems or the effects that are seen in the micro and small businesses. So, like I said, UMRA regulates, licenses, and supervises these microfinance institutions that I had mentioned. And I would like to let this sitting know that last year, 2021, we licensed about 960 institutions, of which only 24 were SACCOs. The reason why there were 24 is because the regulation, of course, came late, and then we were also constrained because of the regulations that came into play to manage the COVID-19 related effects on this economy. So when we're interacting with these, our licensees, we realize that most of these effects that have been spoken about here were compound. Most of them had liquidity issues. Most of them had the ratio of debt to equity was also very high. What did that mean for these businesses? They could not afford or access facilities from these institutions because the cost of lending would go high, because they would eventually go to bigger institutions to borrow for onward lending. And as we continuously engaged them, we also realized that some of these institutions actually closed, which caused unemployment. Most of our youths lost their jobs. And these institutions could not run because, as you may know, most of them are non-deposit. So they run on that fund. If I lend you today, you pay tomorrow, I'll lend another person. So the liquidity issues also caused a lot of discomfort and disorganization in these, our small and micro businesses. Therefore, having noticed that the effects were far-reaching, UMRA, as a regulator, offered some guidelines, tried to address issues from where we were seated. We were constrained because we couldn't move. You know, COVID and its issues. We had to maintain a certain safe distance. And you know, most of these, our licensees, are not very digital. So most of our work was manual. For us to be able to get that information, sometimes we have to go to the field to have on-site inspections and do all this analysis so that we can be able to tell the health of their loan books, their portfolios, and how they operate, and their market conduct. So having this as a constraint to us, the only reports that were received were the ones that we could analyze. And what we found out was like what has been shared here: liquidity issues, portfolios, where there was so much portfolio at risk. Some businesses closed, others relocated, but we also know that some of these small businesses are managed by family. People got sick, others died. Some institutions lent to people who passed on, and then they couldn't survive. So as an authority, we reached out, we issued guidelines that we shared to our licensees, but again, because of the lack of maybe access to information for some of our licensees, they were unable to get this information and therefore act according to how we had guided. So as UMRA, we are very delighted that this partnership has taken effect. And on behalf of UMRA, where we stand, we offer ourselves as a partner. We shall work hand in hand with you whenever we are called upon, and maybe we would implore FSDU to also put a member from the regulatory authority on the tick, because you may need to know how this institution is operating, since we are the ones who license it. So as UMRA, we are delighted to have this fund. And again, we want to say thank you to the government through the Ministry of Finance for creating an enabling economic environment where Mastercard Foundation and FSDU can partner and be cognizant of the challenges in this sector, and also create solutions that we shall together open doors and try to recover these SMEs in our market. So again, I want to say thank you, and we hope that after the 5 years, you shall increase it and maybe take on more SMEs. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Patricia. At this point, I need to stand here. Thank you for painting the picture with the PFIs that we are really going to work with. And we've taken your recommendation to join the PIC very seriously, and we will be putting that into consideration. This is the exciting moment we've been waiting for. I would like to invite Rashmi, the Executive Director, FSD Uganda, to take us through the next stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. It is my absolute honor and pleasure to invite Mr. Ramadan Gugobi, the PSST, to the Ministry of Finance as our next speaker and make the official launch. But before I do so, the quick anecdote that Mr. Gugobi will remember is we worked very closely with FSD Uganda and Mr. Gugobi on the macro analyses that led to the creation of this fund in 2020. We spent several hours creating different personas, and there were 3 personas that we created based on the data of FinScope and the labor statistics. One was Robert, a smallholder farmer, representing 13 million Ugandans who work directly or indirectly in agriculture. The other was Mukisa, who was a light manufacturer, agro-processing. And the third was Nachibule. Nachibule was our favorite, but also gave us sleepless nights. She was a young informal trader representing 1.8 million youth in the country. And what a collective analysis showed is that without any kind of support or stimulus, people like Nachibule would not reach pre-pandemic levels of recovery even in 2023. And that's what was very concerning to Mr. Gugobi and us. I congratulate Ramadan for achieving your vision of a small business recovery fund. This facility is a complement to what you're already doing, and it is to the Nachibules of Uganda that we have dedicated this fund. So you're welcome, Ramadan.
Thank you very much, Rashmi. By the way, Nachibule is my mother. That's my mother's name. And for a record, I didn't choose it for the analysis. It was a different group altogether. So the country manager for Mastercard Foundation, the executive director, FSDU, and your partners, your team. I can see my good friend Daudi. Most of the people in the room, I've worked with them, interestingly, in the other life of mine, before I came to this life of reading speeches. The representatives of government institutions who are here in different capacities, representatives of private sector. I've seen a number of partners we are working with to support recovery. PSFU, I saw also Walugembe. Where's Walugembe? I was telling them that money is going to kill their people because every day we are creating something, which is very good news. Development partners, all invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very happy to be here this morning, partly because of what Rashmi has already spoken about, but most importantly because the financial sector deepening Uganda has invited me to launch what is so dear to my heart, the support to the category of people who are usually left out in our financial system, financial sector system or structure. These are the micro, usually vulnerable groups. I don't know, when we call them micro enterprises, maybe we are sanitizing them a lot. These are vulnerable, working poor groups of people. I appreciate greatly Mastercard Foundation for your generous support towards these people through this initiative and other initiatives that I am very well aware of that you have put out there. This one is for supporting the recovery of these categories of people I've mentioned from the effects of the pandemic. I did some work with FSDU and some international organizations, when we were profiling the damage the COVID-19 was having on these groups of people, different groups of people. At that time, when we were in lockdown, we were working, I remember. And like she has reminded me, it was always this particular group that stood out in terms of how do we really address them. So, as we know, Uganda, since March 2020 to date, has been greatly affected by the pandemic. But this effect has been disproportionate. That's why some people, when you say the impact is massive, they say, no, but we are here, we are alive. There are people who are at the brink, who have been really affected much more than some of us. And initiatives like this coming in can really help us to address that group. There is a study which was done by Economic Policy Research Center, EPRC, and in collaboration with the International Growth Center. And they found that only 10% of the micro, small, and medium enterprises in Uganda remained open during the pandemic. Only 10%. As other sectors had essential workers moving around and working, only 1 in 10 people amongst the micro, small, and medium entrepreneurs was able to be in that category of essential workers. They did a rapid assessment study in August last year, and they found that Uganda's MSMEs were just hanging in there. They were hanging in there to see the next day, with the majority of them far from being resilient. However, the government has had a number of strategic interventions, as we all are aware, to mitigate the economic and health impacts of this pandemic, coupled with easing the containment measures that had been put in place to contain the pandemic. As a result of this, there has been some modest acceleration of economic activities, and we've seen recovery in the horizon. I will not bore you with the numbers that we have repeatedly talked about in terms of performance of the economy, but what I should say is that all indicators are showing us that following the reopening of the economy fully last month, the prospects for recovery. And our macro team at the ministry, they are telling me by the year 2023, June, we are likely to have seen substantial recovery of the farms and the economy at large. Government is very committed to promoting financial inclusion. As you know, it has always been committed, but it's even now committed much further. Why? Because we know that there are 2 key proven opportunity equalizers in life. One is education, the other one is financial inclusion. If you want to equalize opportunities amongst people, give them those 2 things, education and financial inclusion. If people have access to finance at good terms, terms which they can afford, and also people have education, they will always sort out themselves. They will find means to prosper. And government is very committed to this. We have a very well laid out national financial inclusion strategy, which envisions all Ugandans having access and using a broad range of quality and affordable financial services to help them ensure financial security. We also recognize that concessional financing is needed for investing in recovery, resilience, as well as business sustainability beyond the pandemic. Therefore, among other things, as government, we have implemented a number of packages to help in this journey. And you know some of them, or all of them. We have a presidential initiative on wealth and job creation that has been popularized as a Myoga program, through which government is channeling financial support in the form of grants to those enterprises which are already vocationalized, identified their space in 18 areas that have been spoken about very regularly. And these Myoga, they are helping a few of these Nachivules and others in the markets there, in the garages, in border stages, in saloons, and so on and so forth. I've had a number of people who don't qualify for Myoga commenting about Myoga. Yeah? Why don't you leave the people who are qualifying for them to comment? Because sometimes some of us, we are too comfortable to appreciate certain things. But I wish you could put yourself in the shoes of the Nachivule who is receiving some of these Myoga. I've spoken to some of them. I've encouraged people to get feedback to us. And the kind of information you can get from there, it's really heartwarming to some of them. But it doesn't make a lot of sense to elites who sit in these air-conditioned buildings and everywhere, watching TV, tweeting away on an iPhone 13 Pro, and so on and so forth. Yeah? The world is quite different for some of us. So that initiative is there to support, and I'm very glad that it is being now buttressed by this intervention by FSDU and Mastercard and your partners to ensure that we can even be more deliberate in addressing these and other people. One area, though, I would want to leave here with clarity is whether this fund is for startups or for those businesses which were operational pre-COVID, or both. That clarity, I haven't yet got it in my head. Because for clarity, what I know is that Myoga were for those who were already operating. The Small Business Recovery Fund is for those who were operational before COVID. So one of these days, the younger people who want to start something after maybe their livelihood, whatever they were doing, which doesn't qualify to be an enterprise, was totally devastated by COVID, might bring a red card to us. What about us? So I would want to know that clarity. As well, I would like to know the clarity in terms of the alignment with the government-provided recovery fund for this particular Nachibule? Where do we draw the line in terms of identification, such that we don't target the same Nachibule with the different funds? Because also Nachibule is a very strategic person who can come in different colors and just changes the dress and he comes. He's the one who got Myoga. He's the one who's getting the small recovery fund because she's a bit scaled up. She's into a vegetable store somewhere with an annual turnover of 10 million shillings. So she qualifies for all these funds, but changing a dress to get all of them. So I would like to know how that clarity can come out in our harmonization. We have also developed now the parish development model, as you are aware, which is a whole of government strategy or approach for organizing and delivering the not only financial inclusion, but also other services to the people at the parish level. But the key one, which is relevant for us here, is the financing, which again, as grant financing to this parish model. Government is planning next year, every parish, to get 100 million shillings in that basket, which can be accessed by only those people who are outside the monetary economy, but have some productive inputs they can put to use if they accessed funding. It's not money for buying iron sheets and blankets and mattresses. It's money for production. It's going to be tied to productive ideas, particularly beginning with the agro-based activities, So some of our people, smallholder farmers in villages who have 2 acres of land, they have been growing some potatoes and simsim to eat. We would want them now to introduce some commercial activity on this land, and they access some money to get the inputs and other things which they need to produce. Because we don't want the excuse anymore of access to finance to address those things. And also we don't want government to be so patronizing to say that I can purchase for you the inputs and I bring them, usually off season, sometimes those which are not needed, so often of poor quality. We want to cure all those by giving you the power back to the people who have to take these decisions. So that fund has been put in place. It is being piloted in Bukedi in terms of how we are going to organize these. There are people who have been there working. The entire government is there right now in Bukedi. The president is going to be launching the initiative. We want to identify all the gaps early enough, such that by July, we know what we shouldn't do and what we should do. That initiative is also to take the economy to the people where the economy hasn't been. I've already talked about the small recovery fund, which we are administering with the Bank of Uganda. 200 billion shillings, government brought 100 billion. The banks are matching it with 100 billion and accessible to those businesses which were operational before the COVID hit. They can get the money up to 100 million shillings, because that's also the turnover for a small business, the maximum turnover, according to our definition of a small business. And they pay back in a period which has also been defined, the grace period defined. And for us, since we are government, we have also defined the interest which should be charged on these funds, because purely grant, we don't charge any interest. So we have left the banks to charge half of what they should have charged if they were to provide the loan fully. And that is 10%. So accessible at that rate. I heard in this fund you chickened out in defining the rate. We are not chickening out. We have defined it 10%. We can always have a conversation on that. I therefore wish to appreciate this initiative of the Micro and Small Enterprise Recovery Fund, because it is timely and will complement as well as bolster the government efforts in supporting the economy's recovery from the effects of the pandemic. I only emphasize the need to align this fund with our initiatives which are already existing, so that they are well harmonized and they don't fall on the same beneficiary and leave out the rest. It is so relevant that the targeting of the most vulnerable and financially excluded individuals is emphasized. We need to emphasize it in this country, because we have been building economy for the few. You know, I've always been telling government before I joined the government, and I used to tell government every time I got opportunity, please don't build a rich country with the poor people. Many countries have done that. In South Africa. South Africa is a rich country, but with the poor people. That's why they have a lot of challenges there. I don't know whether I have any South African, I'm sorry, but that's the reality. You can easily build a rich country with the poor people if you exclude huge numbers from especially education and financial inclusion. You will have a very big challenge. Now that I'm here in the government, I'm part of the solution. No more questions, and I'm glad that FSD is making my life a bit easier with Mastercard by ensuring that we can reach out to these people. And our commitment now is to really fully monetize the economy. That's the theme of the next budget, full monetization of the economy through commercial agriculture, industry, market access, and digital transformation. If we did those things, we feel more people will be pulled into the economy, and the economy will work better for everybody. It is also important that this fund gets well popularized and the right information is given to the right people, so that its accessibility is widely saturated to the population, and they can be able to engage in it. I've been given a very good, I don't know how you call this in your technical language, a summary of what this fund is all about. It's quite wonderful. I don't know. My commission, if we did this one for our small recovery fund, shall we die? It looks, you know, it looks wonderful and very clear. So with this clarity, I think we can do great in getting this fund to the beneficiary, and the right beneficiary should get the right information. There is a tendency in Uganda of people who shouldn't be the ones to receive certain support, actually capturing the support. Sometimes we call it elite capture. But with this kind of targeting, I'm sure Nachibule will be the person to get the fund, not my commissioner or myself or a town clerk somewhere. Mastercard and your partners, thank you for the proper targeting. I would like also to appreciate the sustained partnership that we've had with FSDU over the years to improve financial inclusion landscape in Uganda. Personally, in the few, couple of years when I got to know and work with FSDU, Mr. Ruwama there, and then later I met this wonderful lady, very passionate about financial inclusion and the proper targeting of what you intend to do. She has always taught me one thing: how shall you measure success? And when I was checking here, I was, let me see whether Rashmi has answered her own question, and you answered it. So I really like the style of work that you've brought into us. I applaud you as well as the Mastercard for this initiative and pledge government support to promote the success of its implementation. And anything you think we should be doing, please, we are ready. I encourage you to work with the sector regulators to ensure that, and I'm glad that she's here, as well as, I think, Bank of Uganda, the overall regulator of the sector. I'm sure he's on board. The other day, Michael was telling me about it. I actually expected him here. I don't know what happened. So please work to ensure that we oversee and better understand the institutions through which you are channeling these funds. Government is devoted to promoting the recovery of the economy and welcomes any efforts from development partners as well as other actors which are geared towards this cause. As I've told you, we have a very positive outlook, economic outlook. The economy looks good in the horizon. We are going to recover. But that recovery will hinge on ensuring that we all get vaccinated. If we don't get vaccinated, like the younger people in this room, if we were to say, bring the vaccination card to stay here, some might not succeed in staying. You have got a lot of wrong information, how you will not have children, how you are going to die early, how, that's not true. Let us vaccinate so that even if we get the COVID, it doesn't impact so much on the health system, healthcare system, and the president shouldn't lock down again. But you remember what he told us? If another variant comes and the numbers escalate again, we can easily go back to a lockdown. And that will be the end of Ugandan economy, if we lock down again. So we shouldn't. And the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development will be looking forward to continuous engagement with all the partners during the implementation of this fund so that we can share lessons and best practices to improve the implementation of similar interventions, even in government. With the interventions such as this, I am very optimistic about the future. The past 2 years may have been a pain to all of us, but the future looks very bright, in my view, especially now that Nachibule is also covered to a certain extent. We can only scale up. I thank you very much for listening to me and for inviting me. And I don't know whether it is also my honors to officially launch this fund. I officially launch the Micro and Small Recovery Fund of Mastercard and FSDU with all your partners. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your kind remarks. As a sign of a launch of the MSE Micro and Small Enterprises Recovery Fund, we are going to have a sign-off of our board by our guest of honor. We will have a sign-off by the country head, Uganda, the Mastercard Foundation, the Executive Director, FSD Uganda, and the representative from the Microfinance Regulatory Authority. Yes, yes, please. Thank you, sir. Yes, David from Sigma, please join us. John Mark, the final signatory for today. John Mark is from New Grid. Thank you very much. This is the moment when we have a photo opportunity with all our signatories who have participated in the official launch of the Micro and Small Enterprises Recovery Fund. Arnold. Okay, just one last one. We have the technical team, technical committee. Please join us here for another round of photo moment. Thank you very much. Officially launched the micro and small enterprises. Let's continue to interact, network. Thank you very much all for joining us. FSDU team, Rashmi? Yes, Rashmi, FSDU team. Like really?